Welcome back everyone to 4FS Gaming. This is Doc, and today we are going to be going over one of the newer enforcers introduced into Battlefront 2, the Separatist Army's Droideka. By far one of, if not the most polarizing classes in the game. It is a class of extremely high stats and capabilities, but also equally extreme weaknesses and low stats. And in this video, we will do a deep analysis of how all of their stats mesh together, and how effective the Droideka really is. Some of you may have noticed that the last video on the Death Trooper looked a lot better than the videos I did on BB-8 and BB-9E. That's because, slowly and steadily, I'm refiguring out how to edit videos, and soon my PC will be upgraded to make the extra workstation tasks I'm doing that much faster and easier to do. So the content I'm putting out for the channel will only get better from here on out. But now, without further ado, let's see what actually makes the Droideka so unique among all the other enforcers. Beginning with its general health and other statistics. It has a solid 350 base health, and this can be improved to 420 with star cards. This is a decent amount of health on its own, and combined with one of the Droideka's other abilities, it makes it into a really difficult target to take down one-on-one. But that base health and other health values similar to it is good on other classes because with it, they have the ability to dodge away from damage and survive with some health to spare. And this is where we come to the first major downsides of the Droideka. When deployed out into its destroyer mode, which is its default mode, it has by far the slowest movement speed of any class in the game. On top of that, it has no evasive dodge, dash, or roll, meaning it has no quick escape options at all for escaping danger. It has no melee, so if somebody gets close, you're going to have to gun them down. And you can't jump, so if you need to get over a low piece of cover or parts of the terrain, you're stuck while deployed out into destroyer mode. Furthermore, chasing down weakened targets is also out of the question when deployed, for the same reason as running away. You have no quick movement options. Now, that's not to say the Droideka doesn't have any movement options at all, quite the contrary in fact. And the Droideka's left ability is the option in question, changing you from destroyer form into wheel form. The ability itself is just a way to transition to this form. It takes 1.5 seconds to get into wheel form, and 1.5 seconds to get back into destroyer form. While in wheel form, your movement speed increases exponentially, and your full sprint speed makes you one of the fastest ground units in the game. You also gain the highly useful and sought after ability to jump. It's not a very good jump since it has a roughly half-second delay before you actually jump, and it slows you down a lot while you are airborne. But to help you along in your merry rolling, you also have a damage reduction effect applied at all times while you are in wheel form, at around a 20% damage reduction. It's just enough to help you get from one corridor to another while taking some fire. And if you decide to run away, keep in mind, you cannot go backwards. You have to completely turn around and go forwards away from the enemy. And it pains me to say this, but you can't do any damage when you run into someone while in this mode. In fact, you actually can't do any damage at all while in wheel form. You'll have to get into your destroyer form to do any damage. But with your large size and extremely limited mobility, how are you going to survive for longer than a couple of seconds? Well, I'm very glad that you asked that question, because that's where the right ability comes into play. While its name is different, you wouldn't be completely wrong thinking of this ability like a modified version of Fortify. This very strong and useful shield will immediately generate around the Droideka, protecting from all direct damage. Any damage that would normally go through shields will still go through, such as shock and gas grenades, lightsabers, or any melee-like abilities. One major advantage the shield has over Fortify is that while the shield is taking damage, your actual health bar can still be regenerating, since both health bars are completely separate. The shield also has a much shorter cooldown, coming in at only 7 seconds, and its duration is as long as you want, as the shield will never deactivate on its own unless it runs out of health or you go into wheel form. And trust me, it won't be running out of that health as quickly as you might expect, because the shield has a massive 600 points of health, the same as some heroes. But ion grenades, ion shot weapon attachments, and anti-armor tools are incredibly hard counters to the shield, since they will take away all of that health in no time by ignoring the giant health pool of the shield and doing critical damage to it. There are only two real downsides to the shield that are constant problems. It increases the size of the Droideka's already huge hitbox, and it's on the Droideka. You see, with most Enforcers, Fortify, or whatever health regeneration ability they have, is good because it gives you an extra buffer to get out of danger, which is Fortify, or heal back your base health over the course of a battle by doing damage to enemies, which is 2 of the other newer Enforcers introduced. All other Enforcers also have dodges with damage reduction so they can survive long enough to get to safety even while under fire, but the Droideka has none of those things. If you are getting shot at by multiple enemies, the shield is the only buffer you have, and once that's gone, if you're still under fire, you also have to take a couple of seconds to get back into your wheel form to get out of there, all while taking damage and being unable to defend yourself, which necessitates that you are proactive with your retreats. But thankfully, the Droideka is so fast while in wheel form that if you pick the right time, you will take minimal damage during your retreat. But again, there you saw another point at which it's plain to see the Droideka is a unit of extremes. Extremely high defense, extremely low mobility, which kind of cancel each other out in a way. But somehow, the worst of it has yet to come. And I'm talking about their primary weapon system and overload ability. And trust me, I have certainly saved the best, and at the same time, the worst for last. To summarize the weapon system before we get into the specific stats, think of it like a shotgun, because the effective ranges on the blasters are laughable at best. The bolts they fire do have some interesting characteristics, but the damage falloff is, well, let's see what the blasters are like, and you'll see exactly what I mean. Starting with the base damage values, and right off the bat I have to warn that these are some of the most highly inconsistent damage values I have ever seen. There are 2 components to the damage: the actual bolts hitting a target, and a small explosion that occurs once the bolt hits a surface. Sometimes, only the direct hit damage will apply. Sometimes, just the after effect explosion. Sometimes both. All of the numbers I have listed here are under the best of possible conditions. At close range, each pull of the trigger will net you 45 damage. 40 of this is direct damage, and the other 5 is the explosive damage. The headshot damage is 81. Which is strange because that's actually a 1.8 times headshot multiplier, the only time I have ever seen it be anything other than the 1.9 times headshot multiplier we're used to. Firing at 300 rounds per minute, the DPS is 225 for body shots and 405 for headshots. Overloaded, the rate of fire goes up to 400, so the DPS shoots up accordingly to 300 for body shots and 540 DPS for headshots. It lasts for the standard time of 9 seconds, up to 15 if you use star cards, and has a 15-second cooldown. Now these look like, and in fact are, really good damage numbers in a vacuum, but this is only looking at the raw damage without the damage falloff. And here's where things go literally and metaphorically downhill in a hurry. The damage falloff starts at a ridiculously short range 10 meters, and ends at 30 meters. With the damage falling to an absolutely tiny 10 damage. Remember that 5 of that 10 damage is the small explosive power the bolts have, so the bolts themselves only do a measly 5 damage for direct hits. That means that your direct hit DPS at 30 meters and further is only 50, and the worst part is that sometimes the extra explosions won't do their damage, so that number of 50 is likely even lower. Now this wouldn't be that big of an issue if you could just get closer to your enemies. But as we discussed earlier, the Droideka does not move quickly at all while deployed out into its destroyer form, so whatever range you are away from the enemy, they are going to have to get close to you for that range to decrease. And who is willingly going to get close to a Droideka? Personally, I am not one of those people. So when you deploy out into your destroyer form, pop overload, pop your shield, you'd better make sure that the enemy is not going to have enough time to run away and get out of your effective range. Otherwise, you're going to waste those 2 abilities and barely do any damage. This ridiculous amount of damage falloff leaves the Droideka as a purely close-range sweeper. But those situations are not very common except on certain parts of Camino, and around 1 or 2 corridors or caves on all of the other Clone Wars era maps. So what kind of tactics should you employ when using a Droideka? Get yourself into a closed-off, close-range position that you can easily reposition from, and have some teammates around you to help kill the enemies that get too close to you or too far away, and also there to help you retreat and reposition, because unfortunately that is the only situation in which the Droideka is a more attractive reinforcement choice over the normal B2 Super Battle Droid, or one of the other really good options the droids have. But the situation I explained is really uncommon due to how, like I said, most of the maps are laid out. In comparison, the B2 has less health, sure, but has way more mobility, a weapon that is at least decent at long range and still really effective up close, and nobody's going to say that the B2 is a very maneuverable unit. But somehow it is still more maneuverable than the Droideka. The B2 rocket droid does better because it has good damage and high mobility, so it can outmaneuver most kinds of enemies that you see. And the infiltrator for the Separatists, the commando droid, is just on a whole other level. But they're a topic for another video. This is all just a really roundabout way to say you probably shouldn't use the Droideka unless you really want to, since there are far better, far more consistent choices that are more worth your battle points. But what do you guys think of the Droideka? Perhaps I'm being too harsh on it, or maybe it really does need a little love to get it in a better niche than the one it has right now. Personally, I really like the design of them, and I thought that they were one of the coolest things about the Phantom Menace, besides Duel of the Fates that is. But I was really excited to see them in Battlefront once again, as I loved using them in the original Pandemic Battlefront series. But they just are not effective in their current state right now, at anything other than point-blank range that is. But they can get overwhelmed easily, and fall to even mild concentrated fire, and lose hardcore against lightsaber heroes. But let us know what you all think, and leave a comment down below. The next video is again going to be a surprise. I still have a bunch of footage I'm sorting through and seeing what I actually have enough footage to do a video on, but feel free to request something and I'll see what I can do. But I will give you a hint, and it is a very obvious hint. It is going to be another Enforcer, and it's one that this channel has not yet covered. So you have two options to pick from, and I think you all know what it's going to be. In the meantime, I hope all of you enjoyed this video. This is Doc, and I will see all of you in the next video.